Okay, hello. So, your world building. Okay, so basically, you gotta figure out how you're going to start. Like, if you have like a basic idea, like I know Harry, you were talking about having a sort of futuristic kind of cityscape. We'll open a new tab and I'll just like write notes down so you can see that. Okay, so Harry, let me check. I gotta find it because I know Harry sent it to me. Okay, so like a futuristic My Hero Academia. I've got no idea what My Hero Academia is, but it's like 50, 100 years into the future, so 75 years. Most people just have magic. Like, I know, I genuinely don't think it's a bad idea, but I feel like it's a little bit rough. You've got to sort of like round it out and figure it out a bit more. So let's just say that's a basis for an idea. Great, okay, where are you going to set it? Well, probably maybe in like a city, so you might have a big like metropolis, futuristic city. Like I'm picturing a lot of like rain, very dark colours, like kind of cyberpunky sort of vibe, I guess. And then as you move out, the land gets poorer, and it's like, okay, well if ever all the rich people are hanging out in the city, then what's happening outside? Maybe there's slavery, maybe there's, I don't know, poor people. So it's like a lot of agricultural land and like, toxic waste sites. I know Harry, in the past you recommended to me putting in like a idea of like nuclear sort of wasteland sort of areas. You could do that sort of thing, having like sludge pools, like waste, where waste is dumped from a city, like that sort of idea. And then, okay, how did this come to be? You got to make history for it. You got to really like figure out all these ancient areas. I guess that's like a starting point though. So if you're starting though, you got to sort of figure out how much you are going to make. And I know I did this. I typically recommend starting with a very small region. So say you want it to be like, you want a lot of land so people can still have a lot of freedoms. Maybe put them in an island, or on an island, so it's like they cannot leave because all the ships got destroyed because of a war, or there's a beast in the oceans that's just woken up and is now destroying all the ships. Like, that could be a plot point, as well as a reason that they cannot leave the island. Something like that. You could put them in a forest that's just like infinite, and have a bunch of like settlements in the forest. So you don't need to really make a forest, you just have 5 or 6 written descriptions or something that you can just sort of like pick and choose parts of to have different ideas. And then you could just like throw in an encounter or a location or something like that around. So then you have like different buildings or whatever in the forest. So yep, great. You could also, this is an idea I saw in a world building project called I think it's the Eternal Ruins, I think, which is like an entire world which is a maze, and it's kind of like not really the back rooms, but like it keeps going on. You cannot escape it. It's all different. It's all like, it looks like it was made by an ancient group of people. It's not really understood. You cannot leave the maze at all, and that's sort of like the point of it. You're stuck, and that sort of idea. So that's like a good starting point to just like have maybe a basic idea. So let's say I want a small town with a ghoul around somewhere, just a little fella. Okay, well, why is he there? Maybe he's hiding from a greater demon. Okay, great. So that can be more of a long-term thing. Where is it hiding? It could be in an abandoned windmill. Okay, why is it abandoned? Maybe there's a business failure, something. And you can just keep wedging out all these ideas and slowly expand a world based on just one tiny location. Which, I guess typically, like, that's how I kind of do it sometimes, but it's more or less up to you and how you want to do it. So expanding on like a basic idea is, I guess, a point that it's very easy to get stuck on, because you're like, okay, I have a city, but it doesn't feel alive. There's like a big evil company ruling over, but like, how did they gain power? How did the people go with it? Like, what happened? You got to sort of really figure it all out. So I guess we'll go back to our ghoul idea. So it's in an abandoned windmill or whatever, and you got to sort of, well, I suppose, okay, why is the windmill abandoned? Maybe there's a food shortage, so people aren't working. Why is there a food shortage? Maybe there's a famine, or there's a plague, or everyone has just left the area. Why have they left the area? They were forced out, maybe bandits were attacking. Okay, cool. So maybe the bandits were hired by that bigger demon fella to go hunt down this ghoul, and now he's hiding there as all these guys are showing up. And the people are now, of the village, are now like sending in the military from bigger cities or their capital to try and take back the town. So there's a full-on fight happening here. So your players could show up and have this like war-torn village with just this windmill or tower or something like sitting on the hill, which is basically untouched because no one's been able to quite get it yet. But really inside, it's where this deranged and freaky ghoul is or something. So like, you gotta sort of keep building out these ideas, which really can give you a basis to go off. I guess we'll go again. So we'll go back to our island idea. Great. So from what I remember about it, just even though I just said it, so island. Maybe so you cannot leave the island. Why not? Maybe there's no ships, or maybe there are ships, but they're all getting destroyed. Why are they getting destroyed? Maybe there's a war. Maybe there's an ancient leviathan that's just woken up in the oceans, which has trapped everyone on this island. Maybe it's just like a storm season and all the ships are getting destroyed, or something. Maybe the ships just disappear and no one hears from them again. Like, you can really just question heaps of stuff. You can have mysteries and warnings about this stuff. Okay, well, what would be on the island? Well, if it's an island which is now separated, it might be struggling to create food. So there might be people starting to go hungry. There'd be a very frantic, probably government effort to try and like deal with all this, all the new troubles that they've experienced. You gotta like really look at the world and like look at how it happened. So like, if you look at a modern map of Europe, okay, well, how did it come to be? You got to figure it out, like slowly moving backwards and looking at it. Okay, well, let's take Germany as like the major region of change. Why does it look like that? Okay, well, it was recently occupied by a number of other countries. Well, why was it occupied? Because it had just lost a major war. How did it lose the war? Because it ran out of supplies, used all its forces, and took too many risks. Why did it do that? Because the leader was insane. And you just gotta keep, like, digging deeper. Why was he insane? He was taking loads of drugs. You just gotta, like, really look at it. So you gotta, like, build out ideas and locations. I mentioned this to Perry at Cross Country a while ago. So, like, if you're in a dungeon and you find a skeleton, great. Normal D&D adventure. I already have a number of questions. What is the dungeon? Because you can't just have a dead end in the middle of nowhere. What's the point of building a dungeon with dead ends? It could have been built like a maze, but that's another line of events. You got to really build out an idea. Additionally, why is there a skeleton there? Maybe there's a necromancer around. If so, why are they raising the dead? Like, are they using them as weapons, or are they guarding something here? I kind of mentioned it, like, what if this is like a tomb, or they're hiding something within this place? Maybe it was buried, maybe it's been found. You gotta, like, say you want a buried prison for whatever reason. Great, so it's buried, maybe you're trying to like hide these people, keep them away from the sun, no sunlight, no interaction. Cool, that's awesome. But who are you keeping in here that's so bad? So why are these people in here? What have they done? Maybe they've committed crimes against a secret organization. If so, what is the organization? You gotta like, I know I keep saying this, why certain things are happening. It's like, you gotta like really just rinse out and find what individually makes this larger whole. So, and now when you're like making an entire world, or like when you want to go beyond your island setting or forest or maze or whatever, how big do you want to go and how much detail do you want to do? So for me, I know like I've made planets in the past and I've done a lot of work to make them realistic. Like honestly, it took I really had to learn about ocean currents, more about topography, how glaciers form, what damage they leave on landscapes, and just loads of really weird stuff that just wouldn't come up anywhere else apart from in sort of this setting. So that's a quite detailed look at it. You've got volcanoes, tectonic plates, loads of stuff, history, beliefs, cultures, religions, like loads of stuff. How much food people are getting, where does the food grow, how are they getting it, histories, nations, colonization, how's it going? Yeah. And then you could just go like completely fantasy, like there's an island, why is it there? Just is. Just there's always been there. Or you could have a view of the world more like olden Europe, like 16, 17, 1500s Europe, where it's like center of the world is here, God made the world, and it's just how it is. Islands can appear and disappear, it doesn't matter how, it's just they do. It's like, in reality, this is actually true. Volcanoes that are now, I believe, extinct, just sort of appeared, created small islands, and then quickly eroded away. So it was like, these really crucial points appear for like 2 to 3 years, and then disappear again. So you've got to try and claim them, because then you get important trade access routes, or outposts, or military bases. Yeah, that sort of thing. You gotta figure out realism. How much do you want to do? With my new setting called Revan Axor, it's so that's where we had the last campaign with the rats and the underground place, and Harry, you were a cat. So in that world, it's not like it's not a planet. It's a very, very different setting. So the realism has quite a lot gone out the window, but to make it feel like there's actual rock solid science and stuff behind it, I have gone through and created a lot of lore. So for reasons I'm not going to discuss, I don't like elements and atomic systems and atoms and protons and neutrons. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to get rid of them. They aren't needed. They're just rocks are just rocks. There is no 2% potassium and 2%, I don't know, bloody gold. There's none of that. It's gold as a rock, but there's no atoms in it. It's just there. But as I was working on stuff, I realized how necessary that sort of stuff is. So basically, I recreated how elements and atoms and stuff work with a completely different system, which is like fully different, but still kind of similar, but in my own way. And that gives reason for how different elements can exist, how they have their potential energies, their how much they can transfer energy, how conductive they are, how strong they are, that sort of stuff. Additionally, how much magic they can hold, which is a pretty crucial thing. Which in my world, that's how they have these abilities. One of the elements, called Eyesight, is anti-magic. So its magic supply is completely capped out inside it. So it cannot hold any more, so therefore it's anti-magic, it resists it. So it's used in this world in very specific ways. So the realism, for the most part, isn't there, but you've got to rebuild what you removed. Or, in this case, like... So, say you're just hanging out in my world, and you're wondering, okay, well, how is this anti-magic? There's actual lore behind it. There's storytelling and history. I know with, like, Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling really created history and background and reasons, even though, as the readers, or viewers in some cases, we don't know a lot. But J.K. Rowling just created a lot, just so she knew how the world worked, away from what she put in the books. And there's a lot that we'll probably never know, as I'm pretty sure she said that. We don't need to know it. So, yeah. You gotta sort of have a solid background that you can then stick all the stuff you want on. But it's really up to you how much you want to go. So, like, say there's a continent, you don't really need to know the tectonic plates, or land masses, or volcanoes. You can just put a volcano anywhere you want. But it can just help in some cases. So, that's that. And you're welcome to ask me questions later. Anyway, so how do you flesh out proper encounters? So, I guess, say you're... Okay, so I wrote this down. So say, goblins attack a place. Why? What are they looking for? Where are they from? Who is working for? Why? Okay, great. So that's really descriptive. Thank you, Past Oliver. So, okay, a goblin attacks a monastery. Okay, why are they attacking the monastery? Maybe they just hate religion. Maybe they're taking some inspiration from Vikings, so you could sort of make Viking goblins, because immediately I think of like Lindisfarne, the Viking raids on these monasteries and stealing loads of stuff. So maybe they are being hired by someone to give them gold, they need funding, they're trying to do something, or maybe they're trying to look for something, a religious artifact which is being moved through the area, like monastery to monastery, church to church, getting transported along so people can see it. Goblins all of a sudden attack, they want it. Okay, why do they want it? Maybe it's secret, maybe it's actually a key or something, maybe it's got magic powers and their boss wants it. Okay, who is their boss? So maybe they are they could be like a goblin overlord, or maybe these are just mercenaries, hired by some other like unrelated guy who just wants this item and was trying to find the cheapest, yet most realistic way of trying to get it. Or you could have, you gotta like figure out the why, the who is working, why is this happening, why are they attacking, what do they want, why do they want it, who are they working for, like, who wants it, who is actually doing this. You gotta really build the idea. So I'm gonna do a little bit more of a proper example building here. So we'll start with a proper region, so expanding a region. I have in my current world a region which is sort of, it's quite mountainous, it's got a river which will basically cut all the way through it, coast to coast. And it'll be really separated, it'll create marshes and it'll create huge mountainous valleys. That's basically all my idea. So, first off, these mountainous valleys, what sort of climates do they have? Well, obviously they're going to be pretty wet because of the rivers moving through them and the rainfall, so we'll have a lot of rain, but also because of how rain works, this is something else I had to learn. rain shadows are created. So when, say, rain comes in from a coast and hits a mountain, the opposite side of the mountain will be drier because all the rain will be hitting one side and leaving the other bare. So rain shadows create like pocket deserts. Like if you look at the Himalayas, the northern side of them, they're a lot drier. Even though they can have snow on them, typically they're not as wet like Nepal is. And northern parts of India along them are a lot wetter than they are. Okay, I need to drink water. One moment, please. Now, carry on. So, you gotta sort of create these rain shadows. So, rain shadows will be better. Okay, so, your rain shadows. So that'll be to the west. Okay, so maybe in lower regions where the water sort of condenses and collects in lakes and swamps, there might be unique creatures living there. So there might be very different environments, creatures that live on the high plains and the lowlands. So there will be like levels of confrontation, especially in times of drought, where these creatures are forced to move. It'll create this sort of level of natural competition. My brain isn't smart enough to talk while I'm typing, so you're gonna have to deal with that. So, these basic ideas, like... So that's like, I guess, a simple start on the regions like this. So very natural landscapes, not a lot of human or, like, I guess, sentient mortal interference with these regions. But how would you create these actual cities and settlements and stuff? Okay, well, it's a pretty wet area, there's mountains, so erosion would be high. So you probably wouldn't build on like slopes or stuff. You might build in the rain shadows, but then where are you getting your water from? So you've got to build near fresh water, but also you'd either have to do something like, if you look at Japan, Hong Kong, like erosion is pretty common there. It's got a lot of rainfall as well, and it's pretty mountainous. So look at how they've done, like, stopped as much erosion. You could put them on the coasts, on bits of islands, on flat bits of land, on very rocky bits of land. They may have loads of trees growing. There might be, I guess this goes back to the natural stuff, like sort of a mangrove-y kind of environment. Trees with long, big, very strong roots holding the ground together. So maybe as cities and stuff expand, there might be more erosion as forests are removed. You gotta sort of like expand these ideas. Yeah. So that's sort of a basic idea, I guess. We'll do cities next, because I know people want that. So I'll expand an idea for a city, I guess. So, I have the idea of a city in the middle of a desert. So, and I have a bit of history for it. So, it was a region that was once ruled by 4 different kings. So it was like these 4 kings of different regions, all of their lands intersected on this one point. Eventually, after loads of negotiation, maybe some wars and stuff, they came together and formed a single nation called, named after the city, I guess, so Ashura. And they created the massive tower, which on the sides of this tower there are these statues which are of these 4 original founder kings, called the Valhayan Tower, which, I'm gonna test my spelling. Tower, yeah, so Ashura Tower. And around it this huge city has been born with like pyramids and loads of stuff, and this is like a ginormous tower. It is like, it's big, very, very big. It's like skyscraper sort of height. It took loads of years to build, and long after the kings were dead. But now they still have these 4 ruling families, which joint rule in almost like a council. So that's basically all my idea of this place. So how do we expand it? So first off, they're in the middle of a desert. How are they getting water? So I already kind of have thought of this. Under the tower is a pit, and it goes deep into, my world has like underground chambers called old worlds. So maybe there's a water one, maybe there's flowing water which comes in from nearby mountains or something. So you could have like springs, and other water wells. You could have, like in the desert as you leave the city, trails of wells and different bores. So people are made to transport water, and that's their job. So there might be a lot of people like in camels or other large creatures that are fitted with like large tanks of water. So it wouldn't be uncommon to see. I have a creature in the world called, I think it's called like a giant's camel or something. I can't quite remember. Sorry. A giant. I can't quite remember. Yeah, but these really big creatures which I think live in deserts. So maybe people have like, it's probably not a great like method of this, but it makes sense. Maybe using like a bull hook or something like that, a really brutal, torturous tool to train in quotes these creatures. They walk out to these wells in the middle of the desert with these like big inflatable sort of like sacks tied to in like caravans, tied to the sides of these creatures. They pump them full of water and they walk them back, and it's hundreds of liters of water getting brought back to the city, and they'll do this like every day for months. And that's just one idea. So creatures transporting water, giant camels with inflatable water skins, bull hooks. So yeah, and that's a basic idea that I can wrap my head around. You can write in whatever way you want. Okay, great. So that's how they get water. So what about food? Maybe, so going back to a giant pit under the tower, maybe they've created a pump network or elevators or something which pump water from underground into a network of like water channels that go throughout the city. So it's like this city is surprisingly wet just because of all this infrastructure underground. If they for some reason lost the infrastructure, it'd dry out real fast. So maybe kind of like tying in a little bit of Venice, there's these water channels. Maybe it's a method of transport. You could put they're not going to be big, but small boats or something in these water channels to transport goods. So these water channels could go like sort of in like a grid or something throughout the main part of the city, and then flow out to large farmlands. You could have a lot of trees, so it's kind of like an oasis. That sort of idea. So you've got, now it's a method of how they are living. So that's food and water solved. Okay, great. So jobs. Well, middle of the desert, you're going to need probably a lot of builders. Like if we're going to be basing this off, I'm kind of basing this off Middle East and a lot of African countries like Egypt. So the construction of like monuments and like the 4 kings, so maybe like a pharaoh kind of deal, making tombs and temples. The idea of this grand tower is not also, maybe it's like a tomb as well. It's where the 4 kings were buried. But additionally, burial practices change a lot. Like in Egypt, we see initially people were building, like pharaohs were building grand pyramids, but towards the end of ancient Egypt, they were building holes in the ground, which were lined with gold, but weren't as grand. and we really see, like, they worked a lot better. If you were expected to travel into the afterlife with all you bring, but halfway through your time, all your stuff is taken, you got nothing. So, it sort of replaces, like, being hidden works better than having a giant tower. So, maybe a long time ago the bodies are actually desecrated. Maybe they're missing. Maybe someone took them years ago and no one actually knows, or maybe they do know. Having different temples, different buildings, maybe slaves, something like that. How do they get the water, well, creatures, the giant camels? Maybe they kidnap them from other countries or other regions. Maybe they're not native to the deserts. So you gotta, like, reach in, figure out what actually makes a city work, and then how can you apply it to these ideas. So that's, like, a way more detailed... I know I've barely written anything, but that is already a much more detailed idea of a city that I didn't have much of an idea of. I guess we'll go with another city. So, I know there's one, I believe it's... Let me just... yeah, so, the city of Tynika. So, it's... all I know about it is it's kind of militaristic, and it has... it's got sort of government, it's very posh, it's very wealthy, and it's got its own real, like, upstanding system. So I am brought to the idea of not only, like, England and the Netherlands, but the fictional planet and city Gallifrey in Doctor Who, which is, like, very posh, very upstanding, big, giant towers sort of place. Google it. So I'm sort of thinking of that. Okay, well, I have an idea of military helmets, which are like these metal and red dyed helmets. So, okay, well, let's combine this red into the city. Maybe their flags are red, so I'm seeing... This is kind of how my brain works. I'm seeing these large, maybe at this stage, sandstone or grey rock gates, which are lined with these long banners which display their symbols. Now it's turning from a very much more posh, refined nation to a more military iron fist just with these banners alone. That's what I see. So, maybe not at the centre of the city is not a palace, but a stronghold, a fortress. This combines with the idea that I've already had. This city-state, is at war with another city-state about land usage and about, like, raiding of different parties and long overdue tensions. So that sort of combines with it. So, I know this city, it probably would have some sort of slave class, inspired by both, like, the Netherlands, England, but also Gallifrey sort of had these poor outskirt people that weren't allowed to be in the city. They didn't have the rank, so it would have poor farmers, or slaves, which are basically just owned by others. So, now saying ruled by the military, I think of other groups that were ruled by the military. So I'm thinking of, I guess, like, the end of feudal Japan. Yeah, they had an emperor, but it was basically the government, the military and other groups like that ruled them. So, Japan, question mark. So, yeah, sort of inspired by that idea. I kind of want this place to be quite high up, so it's like on a mountain range, sure. Again, erosion comes back, so maybe, I guess, Aztec-like steps, so farms and regions, water flows down from the mountain, maybe there's a pump within the mountain that flows down, so cities were built under the foot of these huge fortresses. I guess for some reason I'm getting like a Kung Fu Panda kind of vibe. Like big hill, big temple on a mountain, city under it, even though that's not really how it's laid out. But that's like another idea of a city, which I don't know if that helps a lot, it's just sort of how I think. Right, okay, this is my last dot point. History. How do you make history? History is a tough one. So, if you looked at the world today with no context of the past, you would probably not really understand how it got to be like this. Why are there wars going on in the Middle East? Why does America, for no reason, hate Muslims? Why are certain groups, like, treated differently? Why do some people rather not talk about certain events? Like, what happened? That's already, like, history. So, history is built into the world itself. I know in my world, again, Revan Axor, recently there was a war, and it's like comparative to how long ago World War II was. So there would still be survivors around that have a memory of this war. So building history, okay, there was a big war. Why did it happen? Well, I've actually made all the lore, so I'm just going to gloss over the war. But basically, some evil bloke, he made basically the Infinity Gauntlet and tried to take over the world. He failed, he got killed. So now these items that made up the Infinity Gauntlet are now spread across the world. So they're hidden in different like traps and mazes and stuff. So it depends how far you want to go back with your history. You could create individual cities' history, nations. How did they form? Are there currently conflicts going on? If so, why are they there? Looking at real-world history, like Iron Age stuff, I know when I was making my world, I looked towards Stone Age, the Bronze Age collapse, like post-Bronze Age. Especially Utsi the Iceman, who was some bloke. He died like, I don't know, 40,000 years ago. And he had bronze tools, which is like really surprising, as bronze tools wouldn't be that common. Why did he have them? He was a long way from home. He was hundreds of kilometers from where he was from when he died. And it's like, why did he die there? You gotta sort of question the how and the why and the when of these different locations and places and that sort of stuff. So, yeah. Welcome to Ask Me More Questions. I guess I'm happy to do another one of these, except these take ages to do. Anyway, yep, goodbye.